Afternoon. I'm going to call this Recycling and Corporate Affairs Committee meeting to order. Um, Ms. Creech, would you render an invocation for us, please?
Dear Lord, we want to thank you for allowing us to come before you today. We want to tell you how much we do appreciate everything that you do for us every day. Please help us in our deliberations today and help everyone in harm's way. We ask in your name, amen.
And I need to get an approval of the agenda.
So move.
I guess I don't have to, I only got one person, so just approve. Thank you. All right. What I wanted to do this afternoon is go over a little bit of the conference that was back in March. I attended what I thought may be an interesting concept, and I got some photos for you to look at. It was the Cherokee Way of Zero Waste. This is at their, what they call their transfer station, and I think there's some pictures of it in their transfer station. But what they do is, there's really not a whole lot of stuff going on in that particular area. They take all the waste from the casino. That's basically what they do, but this is not. Their recycling program is, if you know, it's a Cherokee tribe, and so they service all of the residents within their district. So they don't pay any monies. All of those monies will, I guess, come through the tribe, and they have a tribal chief who decides what they can do and what they can't do. And so what they do is they collect the materials from the tribal race, which is about 15,000 people, I think he said, and then they get the waste from the casino. And one of the things I thought that is important there, they do recycle their foods, and they do a compost, and I'll show some pictures in there, and also the pictures of how they collect their food, which is not one, to me, not a real sanitized way of doing it. They recycle their oils, all the oils that they use for cooking and that kinds of stuff they recycle. They do not, though, for some reason or not, they do not have recycling bins in the hotel. They thought that was something that was working on. But the one interesting thing I thought, and I don't know if they do it around here, all of the lotions and soaps and those kinds of things that they have, they recycle all of that. They recycle that and they distribute it to the homeless. So that's something, I don't know if they do anything like that in this area, but I thought that was a neat thing that they did. But when we went to visit the actual site where they do the transfer, they actually just come in with small trucks and dump it in a bin, and they have people come in and pick out through hands any metal or anything that they can use, and they put it in one pile, and you'll see the small pile in the pictures. And then they send the other ones to an actual landfill. So it's like a transfer station. But there they do some composting, and there's some pictures in there. But what I wanted to show you was this little piece of contraption right here, is that they got a grant from the federal government to do a pilot study. What they do is take tires, and they grind the tires up, and they feed them in this little piece of equipment right here, and it's almost like a still, except for they burn it. And what their ideal is to extract all of the chemicals out of the materials that they're made of before they go into the landfill, or if they go into the landfill. The problem they was having is finding a market for the byproduct, which is a carbon black. Now, he did say that carbon black is used in all the soles of our shoes and stuff like that, but they did not have enough tires or whatever it was that they could grind to meet the needs of some of the companies that they were looking at. So I said, well, hey, there's a lot of tires around. If this is something that they can really do, then it may be a market where you could sell them tires and they could actually grind them and do this. But what they do is they extract, this little piece, this is just, if you see, there are like 4 jars of stuff here. They extract all of the things that went into making tires. They take out all of you've got kerosene, you've got gas, you've got diesel fuel, all of these things they extract out of the tires when they run it through that piece of equipment. It's like a still. The only thing is you can't get any water or anything like that in, because if you do, you go boom. And the smoke is almost purified. I mean, it's clear. There's really no particles going into the air. In the environment, the EPA has been out there and looked at it. What they're trying to do is continue to get a grant to see if they can get a larger machine. If you see these trash cans right here, all of these are full of carbon. I think I got a better picture. Yeah, if you turn to maybe the 4th picture, they've got it marked on the top of what they extract when they burn the tires. And this is what it looks like as they take it and refine it. This first bag is what comes out like a char stuff, and then they refine it down to the second bag, and then that third bag is that carbon black that they use to try and sell. And understand, like I say, they use it in the sole of shoes. It may be an additive for cement and that kind of stuff. But their dilemma is getting enough material, and I think the other dilemma that they will have is whatever the tribal chief says, because they continue to change. They just had an election. And so when they had the election, some of the things that they were doing at the hotel, he stopped them from doing it. So, yeah, well, they have a real, it's more of a dictatorship, because whatever he says goes. But at least they elect him and they put him in. And so he has changed some things at the hotel, which has made it different. But this has nothing to do actually with what they collect from the hotels. This is where they had like a trailer load of truck tires where people would just bring them in, I guess, and leave them so that they could use it for an experiment. But they are trying to get a bigger piece of equipment. But then there's a lot of things that he said, you got to have front-end loaders. You got to have enough things to load those tires to get them there. And you got to have enough tires to make it worthwhile trying to sell this. And you got to have a market. And the problem is, I talked to somebody at SWANA just recently, and they're looking at trying to do some of the same things. But the problem is, you can't patent this. You would have to patent the process, because everybody is trying to do this. Anybody can burn it and extract the materials out of it. So what they was looking at is trying to come up with a way to patent the actual process. The guy is still working on it, I guess. If they gave him, if the tribal chief gave him permission, I don't know, but I wanted you to see what the little piece of equipment looked like. This is the stuff that comes out of it. This is a carbon block. And so we spent most of the day looking at that. There's some pictures in here where they collect their oils. It's not a whole lot. That's where they collect their food. All this food in these yellow cans, or the foods that come from the dining hall from the casino. Now, they told me that they sent it out to the landfill and compost it, but I didn't see any going out there. One guy called it a slop bucket, and they feed it to the hogs and all that kind of stuff out in the area out there. But ironically enough, they can't sell anything to, the tribal folk can't sell anything to the actual casino, like, corn or whatever it is, because there's a certain requirement from USDA Foods that they have to meet. So while they are trying to make it circular, the people who would gain the most from this can't even participate in the program. So I thought that was a little weird. But I would think that one of the things that they would do, if they were going to do that, was try to get some of those local folk, USDA approved, so that they could buy from a local vendor, because they grow a lot of this, and they grow a lot of this stuff out there. But I guess they get free food, because they send this stuff back out there to eat it. I don't know if, I didn't eat any stuff while I was there, because I didn't know what they was feeding them. But when the guy told me that. But this is their composting bin. It's just pushed up in a pound, and then I've got a lot more pictures. I didn't want to embarrass them, so I didn't show I won't show you all the pictures they got. But they just got piled up on the side of the road, a lot of tree stumps. And I guess that was whenever they have a storm or something, they just come and then just pile it up there, and it's about 7 stories high, and they just leave it there. But they don't look like they windrow any of this stuff. They just kind of push it up in a pile, and I'm assuming some of this shrimp and chicken and all that stuff, it ends up in there somehow. But it wasn't, I don't know where the zero waste came from. Other than what they do in the hotel. And I was a little disappointed in the tour, because I thought we were gonna actually see something that would help us. They walked us through the hotel and took us in a room and sat us down and told us that about the lotions and that kind of stuff. But that was, you can see, here's the scrap, and I don't know, I guess they got a couple of front-end loaders. So if they get something too big, they can pull it out and put it over there. But that was the actual tour that they gave, and I don't think any of the other tours were any better. But I thought that this may be something that we could keep an eye on and follow up, because if they do come up with some way to use tires and extract, and the other thing is, I don't know what they're gonna do with, and how pure this stuff is that they extract out of here. But it is a way of keeping stuff out of the landfill, if you can extract these kinds of things out of there. But that was one of the ways they was trying to do that.
Okay, did they ever say how, with the grant that they got, how much it cost to make that piece of equipment? Did they give you any idea?
It was a relative cheap, less than $10,000, I think it was, like $8,000–9,000. It's just basically a boiler and a tank. You know, the piece of equipment is not really that expensive, and that's why they were able to get the grant. The biggest thing is again, getting permission to get something bigger. And if they got something bigger, then they were going to have front-end loaders, and then they were going to have more tires, and those kinds of things. And so, like I say, I don't know how, but the guy. They actually put this thing together themselves. It came on like a flatbed, and they just kind of bolted it together and put it there, and it's not a whole lot of, and one of the things that they do is the diesel fuel that they extract out of these things, they use that to refire it. So they don't have to buy diesel fuel. So that's one way of using the fuel up that they have. But I thought it was kind of neat.
That is neat. I've never heard of, have you ever heard of anything that would do that, Danny?
Well, as you heard at Polly's, the state has a problem with tires.
Mm-hmm.
And if this was the silver bullet, somebody would be doing it on a big, right? Probably some of these end products you could use, but some of it you've got to have markets. You know, you're grinding them tires down to put it in other containers to sit there if you can't.
Well,
you can't
and that was,
move it.
well, he got this idea from one of the conferences, and like you say, there are a lot of people that has the capability of doing this, but it boils down to, again, what are you gonna do with the end product?
Yeah.
And like you say, with all the problems with the tires, it can't be that big a deal, because somebody would have already
Yeah.
Because like I said, he knows that a lot of people know that you can do this. It's just that they don't have any way to get rid of it.
The way reason they may not have done anything is somebody's waiting to patent it to be able to sell it before they really do anything with it so
Yeah,
that they
this
can
is
make
what,
money.
yeah, this is what he was trying to do, is beat everybody to the gun by getting a patent. But since so many people know about the process, you know, it's difficult for him to kind of patent the process.
And when fuel is cheap,
Yeah.
that just tears up these projects because they got to make money.
Yeah.
And if the end products, you just,
Well,
the end
that was his
product,
problem. He really didn't have a market. I mean, he had a market, but he didn't, they weren't gonna let him, I guess, build a bigger machine. And then again, he had a problem with getting the tires, and I guess he hasn't convinced the council, the tribal council,
Right.
that he can get rid of this stuff or he can do something with it. And I guess until he can do that, he'll be shut down. Yeah, so I haven't heard anything else, you know, but
Well, it's a very interesting concept, and of course, if they could figure out how to do that and make it work for us to be able to get rid of tires, would be a great thing.
well, I thought the interesting process is that the concept is that it would be keeping it from going into the landfill.
Right.
And not only can they do tires, they can do plastic.
That was another thing
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you.
Yeah,
Can they do
Yeah,
anything else and
they can do
extract
any,
that?
they don't do PVC.
Okay.
They don't do polyvinyl, you know, chloride. They don't do that because of the chemicals. But clear plastics and stuff like that, they can extract all the oils and the gases and whatever goes in there to make that bottle. They want to take that out before it reaches the landfill or before you put it back in the landfill, which makes good sense
Yeah,
because that way you actually decompose the stuff before it gets there.
wonder if it would do the plastics that China's not taking anymore, or that we really don't have a
probably
recycling.
will, but then it's the end product.
Right,
What
you
you
got
gonna
to have
do?
something to do.
Yeah.
What you gonna do with it?
And he came up with the ideal. It's sort of like putting the cart before the horse. It's a good idea, but he did not probably research what he was going to do with what he got.
Right.
And then when they got what they did get and realized that they could get it, they figured out that they didn't really have a market for it. And so it's a catch-22, but it is a good idea. But again, this is on a small level. And anytime you go up to a bigger product, you're gonna encounter more. This is manageable because you got two people standing here looking at it and can click something here and something here. I don't know how it would work if you put in tons and tons of tires into a big machine.
I mean, we got a
Yeah.
tractor trailer going out of here every day
Right,
with loads of tires, and the bigger you get, the more emissions you got, the more it just compounds the deal, but it's always good to look and study and look at what people are doing, because, but it's the end product, that's where we all get.
Yeah, you got to do something with that. Has gas gone back? I mean, we're fixing to do a lot of roads. Has everything, asphalt and everything, I know that their bidding on the roads has gone up quite a bit from last ride too. Is it getting back up there enough that they would be buying the tires or at least taking them for nothing to be able to put that in with the asphalt?
Well, the shingles is what,
The shingles are what does it.
hoping that we haven't had anybody, they haven't been beating on the door, asking for them. But natural gas is still relatively cheap, and that's kind of drives the market too.
Do you know of any of the motels that do anything with their extra soaps and shampoos like Mr. Husey?
No, ma'am, not to my knowledge. I'm sure some of that comes with its own set of liability issues too.
Right.
You know, we heard when we were doing that thing with the planning commission in Myrtle Beach, I heard that one of the motels spoke to that they were doing it or using refillable bottles, I believe
I think that
that's
was
what,
it, yes, sir.
what it was.
Using a refillable bottle.
Instead of throwing those bottles
plastic
away, they'd
bottles away.
refill them.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do we ever, go to the hotel motel convention here?
We haven't been to the convention. We go and visit the chamber and talk to their hotel motel council.
Numerous times.
We put the word out, we're here.
It's kind of hard. But they don't have that big a problem because they're only dealing with one large casino.
That's right.
And they control the whole process. And so but it's an ideal.
Yeah.
And I don't know how receptive, these guys would be, they make plenty of money, they probably can make more. Is how much it would, time and effort would it be in it for them to do something like this? I don't know, but it would be worthwhile talking because, I don't know what the implication is as far as liabilities and stuff like that. If it's the same soaps and stuff that they use in the hospitals, it should be okay
Yeah.
to recycle it and do something with it, maybe. I know they had a problem with that sometime when they used to give away food. They stopped all of that because they didn't want people to go and get foods because of the liability and all of those things. So I'm not sure. And
It's almost kind of like, our HHW facility, we might get a can of aerosol, well, not aerosol, let's say a spray bottle that says, weed killer. It's hard for us to determine for sure that's what's in that bottle is actually weed killer. So as opposed to saying, hey, we have a halfway bottle of weed killer that we can give you, the liability of who determines whether that was weed killer for sure, and then if, God forbid, something happens past that, then it falls back on us. So it's kind of almost in that same kind of area,
Well, again, it may have not been, it's an ideal, but again, they're dealing with a very select group of people, which they have control over. And I'm sure that's where it's passed back because they have somebody that picks up the oil and all that's used within their community. So while it was a good tour, it only brings in a certain amount of people. And if you move it into another public arena where you don't have that control, you may not have the same things. But I thought the idea was pretty good. The other thing that I thought was good is when I looked at the trends in the future of MRFs, and some of the things they were doing with sorters and how to speed up the conveyor belts and using automatic pickers for that. They had a long conference on that, and that seems to be the wave of where they want to go with technology. We had a lot of people there from universities, a lot of universities. In fact, they had a whole section on here for educators. We had people from Charleston and University of South Carolina, Clemson, North Carolina. So the educators are looking at getting involved, but they're not looking at it in a way of eliminating waste. They're looking at it, what kind of jobs would be created out of this and what kind of educational tools and plans would we have to put together from a technology standpoint to train people to work in the waste industry. But this future of technology, and we can pull it up at some time, the whole presentation talked a lot about the sorters and how and I think, Danny, you talked last meeting about the motion detective kind of thing. They have some that can speed up your belt and slow the belt down depending on how fast you're picking. They actually have robotic arms that can go in and suction pick up stuff. It was neat. It was like a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
But all of the younger folks that were there seemed to think that it was the greatest thing since sliced bread because it's a technology gizmo. Some of the downfalls in it is operational. How much maintenance does it take, and how much downtime will you have on it, and how often do you have to change out the arms and all of this kind of stuff. But it was an interesting scenario, and most of these were companies that are looking to sell robotic types of equipment. But they did say some people are using them, they are working. I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
know- I
yeah,
don't know
but
how
that-
wide scale they are.
That's the new wave, the robots, and we heard that in Florida. One of the drawbacks on the robots, they haven't gotten to where they can reach all the way across the belt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
that-
one of the things, the width of the width
Yeah.
of the belt. You may have to narrow your belt, you have to move the arm. The only one that I thought that was relatively inexpensive is something that you can mount over the belt that reduces or increases the speed as necessary. If it senses that material is backing up, that the pickers are not getting it off fast enough like that, it'll slow the belt down. And then when it's not cluttered, it kind of speeds it up, so it's like a light sensor. I guess I get involved with sensors because that's what my daughter does. She's a sensor technology. So I got kind of excited about the sensor
Yeah.
kind of thing, but it did look kind of neat. And that was relatively expensive, but you're talking about robotic arms and stuff, you're talking about a lot of
Money.
Not only that, you're talking about maintenance, but the new wave was that. The hospitals, in fact, the young lady that used to work here did a presentation on plastics being collected from hospitals and the plastic wraps, those blue wraps and things like that. They have spearheaded an effort to collect the plastics,
Film.
yeah, from the hospitals. And that had seemed to be a pretty good, and again, I didn't print out all of those for her presentation. It's all online, and we can pull it out. I can't remember all the details, but I know that's one of the things that they're looking at from the hospital side of getting and collecting, that clear plastics and those kind of stuff. So,
Well, as many hospitals and care centers as we have now, that would be a pretty large group of recyclables if you could get them to buy into that.
But she gave me
Yeah.
a list of things right here, and I didn't know. I know this guy. I've known him for a while. Scott Goldberg over at Conway Hospital says that he's doing a great job over there. He works with the city of Conway, that they recycle through them. But I don't know what Grand Strand does or
Grand-
Walkmore. Or those
Yeah,
kind of
Grand
stuff.
Strand does some very limited recycling through us. We've attempted to do some commingled recycling to pull plastics out of their waste stream. Didn't go as well as we would have liked it to, but it's more an internal issue with Grand Strand, and you always have to have, as me and Mr. Hughes were talking earlier, you have to have someone on the inside of that facility who's willing to not only oversee the program, but really take ownership of it and push the program to make sure it does, what you want it to do. And we even nursing home facilities and things of that nature, we've got cardboard recycling is always usually the easiest program to operate into a facility without much additional work on the staff. So, several of the area nursing homes have our cardboard recycling and/or office paper recycling. But when you get into, and it's not that big a deal, like for us looking at it, saying, well, it's a choice of this container versus that container.
Right.
But you have to have that person, that facilitator, to say, we're going to do it, as opposed to saying,
And you got to feel comfortable that materials that's coming out of the health type centers is going to be no health problems there.
Yeah.
You
Can't-
don't want to start
contamination.
having staff
Can
problems.
no.
She,
contagious stuff, so,
There's a list of acceptable plastics that she listed that we can pull out, that the kinds of things that they were looking for. But I can imagine, again, she is, now she works as a part of a hospital. And so it wasn't like they were doing major stuff. It's probably getting off the ground just like we would be doing, but it's an ideal of trying to collect that. And they came up with the kinds of plastic that you could collect. But again, I can imagine there's going to be some concern about contamination and the kinds of things that will be coming out of a hospital. You know, special nursing homes, infectious areas and that kind of stuff, so. And what it touches and where it goes once they get there. They did have and I didn't show Pam all my pictures this time, because I got all my pictures here. I'll show Pam this one later on when I'm feeling better. They took some of the old needles and, things that they had, and they made a beautiful, arrangement out of it, like an artistic stuff, sort of like they did out here with
Yeah.
the roosters and that kind of stuff. I said, well, maybe we can find some artistic people and they can build statues and they may pick it up and sell some stuff. But they did do some things with it. They made some flowers and all kinds of stuff. I said, well, that looks good. But it was good for the presentation, but,
Yeah,
but,
there was a big article in one of the magazines this month about, most of it's on the West Coast, about putting money and grants up for, artists to come in and you pay them for a year and they put their art together, and most of it's in the recyclable stuff they pulled out of the trash. They make the trash available to them to pull what they want out, and it was an interesting article, but you've got to have a pretty big community of that type of stuff to make it work. But you were talking about the agriculture department, kind of give you a uptick on what we're doing about the farmer's market over here. We've already got one lady setting up doing strawberries 2 days a week, and what Elaine's attempting to do is get all the vendors to be certified by the agriculture department, and that way the people at that's in their programs, Council on Aging, they give them both vouchers, and they can be able to use the vouchers here, and they're certified, so there shouldn't be any problem. But hopefully we're gonna have some more people setting up. And basically what we're gonna do is just, they're just gonna charge so much for a parking place.
Yeah.
And if they sell one cucumber or 1,000, it's not based on sales. It's based on that parking place per day. So we're hoping it's gonna take off.
Well, that may be a good thing, because at one point, it seems like in the council that you couldn't just pull up and park anywhere anymore to sell turnips or watermelons. If you weren't on someone's property, they didn't do that. So maybe some of the people that don't have anywhere to go that were used to doing that will become aware of that.
Yeah, they made them buy. My daddy would have been he would have been a prime victim back in the day, because he used to travel and park right. Remember the old IGA store down there? He used to park right across the street from the IGA and sell his sweet potatoes cheaper than the people going in the store.
In the
But
IGA.
you can't do that anymore now. You have to have a peddler's license or some kind of license.
And you've got, state law says they can sell what they raise.
Yeah.
And I had a argument with a guy out towards Ainer one time, and we'd gone out and signs were a problem. And law says I can sell what I raised. And I said, and where did you grow these bananas?
In that greenhouse, right?
At that greenhouse, Pine Pack.
But those were the key points that I saw at the conference. It was good. I met some folk. We had some conversations about glass. People still have concern about what they're gonna do with crushed glass, and I still gotta get, Mike, that car, the guy wanted to get some glass, but I think it may be too far away for him to haul it or something, but they were talking about that. The big conversations at that time, you know, they had the bans going on and people couldn't ship to China and all this kind of stuff. And so there was a lot of conversations about what they were gonna do with that. But the conference was good, a little long. A little long. 5 days is, 4 days. People start tuning out after the third day. But the general sessions, again, are all centered around circular waste disposal, not being lineal, use it and put it in the trash can. One of the conversations that we had, and I think, again, you don't hear much about it. We heard about it in Baltimore. I didn't hear much about it at Swana, and I think I wrote that down, is getting the manufacturers involved
Oh, yeah.
and making a product that you can dispose of and is biodegradable. And
I
they
was gonna
can
ask
do.
you if they were having that conversation.
They had very little conversation on that, and it's hard to get the people who are making the money off of the stuff to come to grips with making products that they can do something with.
That's beginning to catch on in the big, corporate world.
Right,
Starbucks has just put $10 million in one of these programs to jumpstart making a cup that would be recyclable, that could be made into something else. Taking that plastic liner out of a throwaway cup, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So that's beginning to move in the corporate world. Yeah.
yes, Bob.
Just a quick point I wanted to make. You were talking about the Conway Medical Center. I've asked Mike before about what the market is for textiles. Hospitals and hotels are big users of sheets and other fabric. And Scott has a program for how they recycle their sheets here in Conway, which I thought was terrific.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
I just hope he's reporting it.
He does,
Yeah.
he does.
County system up.
He does good.
I don't know, I know Scott, and one of the things that I would like to see is more communication between the hospitals and places like that. If you got someone who's spearheading something like this, who has an ideal, and is going good, to be able to have the opportunity to converse with other people on those areas so that they may come on board with doing some stuff like that. I still think they work a lot in isolation, and that's one of the problems that we have. And I think that's why it worked in Cherokee, because there's only one entity. And usually when you're only dealing with one person, it works better. But if we could get more cooperations between these folk, then we may be able to get a better situation going on. It was really funny, I don't know if it was us, yesterday, picking up trash out on 90. They were doing a fantastic job. They were down in the ditches, and they were picking up, and they cleaned up, and I hadn't been home long, and I went to town to get some cow feed, and I looked, and I said, man, this is great. They've done a great job. I came back an hour and a half later, and all the area that they had picked up, you couldn't tell. And I stood up, and I watched them pick the ditch by my house. I said, man, this looked good. I don't have to do this today. And I came back, and there was a plastic bag, big black plastic bag laying in there. I did see a lady the other day right here by the blue store. It was commendable. They lost a bag of trash off their truck, and they did have the wherewithal to stop and go back and pick it up. And I said, that's commendable. I was going from down this way one day, and I almost ended up in Stare Swamp because somebody's plastic bag covered my windshield, and they never looked back. But again, it's not, and I keep saying it is not, because most of the big haulers and most of the people that are coming here with now that you're charging with the tarps or covered with tarps, it's most of the local citizens that are driving up and down the road with open containers and stuff flying down the highway. And they never stop.
It's just the fact that we continue to pick it up,
Yeah.
and we will continue.
You had something, Bo?
Danny's working on talking to the sheriff and the police chief about using off-duty police to monitor our 25 community centers. Because a lot of the litter that's on the roadside is on residents dropping off stuff to the community center, not securing the roads.
Well, I know, I visit out here a lot, and those folk have a real, I came out here one Saturday, and, I knew the guy was a commercial, vendor, but he didn't have any signs on his truck or anything of that nature. But, I mean, he was out there throwing out, construction material for at least 30 minutes. I said, well, you must be doing a lot of work at your house if, you know, if you're doing that. But it's hard. I mean, what do you say? Because you can't identify him, you know. And he was real smart, too, because I was going to get his license number, but you had the trailer so that he backed in so that you couldn't get his number. So they've got it down, yeah.
I got my first anecdotal story, that our staff have done a great job of telling commercial all the
Yeah. Oh, I saw, yeah, I did happen to come when the guy came, he had a load of, limbs. I said, well, you must be cut all the trees out of your yard, you know, I mean, it was stacked behind, it was really nice. She said, no, you can't unload that, so he was standing there, you know, it's like, I got it out of my yard, and so I just looked at him, she just looked at him and said, you know, well, you must be got a big yard. You're gonna have
Those
to dig that,
people-
you'll have to come back.
Those people do have a hard job,
Yeah, they do,
and they
and they do a great job.
You know, we got that one email stuff, and, that was not the typical, we tell them, I'll get complaints. The week that we got that email from Carolina Forest, I'd had 3 complaints of the people telling folks they couldn't get in a dumpster or couldn't unload a whole trailer load, and it was people that I knew. I mean,
It usually is.
yeah, and we finally got down to the point that they could understand what I was saying. But they have a tough job. And there's not much else they can do but tell them not to. And we had a situation at Red Bluff where the site attendant got kind of upset with the people, and she said some stuff that she shouldn't have said, so we had to reprimand her, and the guy went on, and he dumped all he had on the trailer, and she told him not to. But
Yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing to me because I've had neighbors come to me after going down there and they should have enough sense to know they embarrassed themselves. But evidently they didn't because they tell me what they said and what they did and what the person down there wouldn't do. And my comment to them was, well, you didn't have any business doing what you're doing. You didn't have any business saying what you were saying
Yeah.
to someone. And if you don't understand that, I don't know what to say to you. What is it that you want me to do? Well, they wanted them reprimanded. I said, well, probably if there was anyone to reprimand you, you'd be the one I had a problem with. And of course, they were not happy with that. But it seems like people, everything's fine for them to do it, but for nobody else. And I do not approve of that. And one of those people that told me that should have known that. Better than that. They ought to have known what they were going to get from me, but evidently they didn't. But they haven't come back and told me that. But all of us need to understand that we want some respect and want somebody to treat us reasonably, and we need to do the same thing. We don't need to be going anywhere and disrespecting someone on their job.
and the average age, I guess the average age at centers is probably 70.
We're trying to improve upon that, but
Yeah.
we have 65, 70.
And to me, that's not old anymore.
It's not old anymore, but I'm going to tell you frankly, I couldn't
Yes, it is.
stand out in the weather and do what some of those people do. And I don't know how they do it.
Summer and winter,
Yeah.
Yeah.
rain or
Rain or
shine.
shine.
Well, I'll tell you, Danny, 65 and 70, if you stay on the road, you'll think it's old, okay? It may not be old if you're sitting in the easy chair,
Yeah.
but I'm feeling some of that age. What I'd like to do is, that's about all that I had, that I wanted to share with you. I'm gonna pull out some of the materials some of these, reports from the hospitals, and look back through the kinds of plastics and stuff that they were collecting there, and also the kinds of things that they were recycling as far as the, soaps and stuff like that, because those are something that I'd personally like to follow up with. And I'll talk with Scott, about some of those kinds of things, in the future once I get that. And I'll share that information with Esther. And then, when we have our next, meeting, I'll let you know where I am with that.
Okay. Another thing is too, a couple of years ago, Mr. Gray sent me an article, and, on agriculture, when you said that, it reminded me, and he sent a whole article on the plastics and the little plastic things the plant comes in, and that the agricultural people use a lot of plastics. And they don't use it from year to year. They don't save it. They don't save the long rows of black plastic to keep the weeds from coming. They don't save the little pots and then on to the bigger pots and whatever. And he's right. And I think that is something that we need to look into as well, as much farming as we have in these areas. And with Clemson and some of these other areas that work within the agricultural field, they might want to get involved in some pilot projects and to help the farmers know that, if we get those plastics, I don't know if we even can recycle those plastics, frankly. We can't.
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know?
Depends on-
Okay.
Generally, the move now is for the Clemsons and those type places is now designing this stuff to where after about a year, it starts breaking down.
Yeah,
The plastics actually just break down totally. But once they plant it and then you pull it up and it's full of soil, there's not much way that we could recycle
That
it.
we could do it
No.
anyway.
yeah. But
I know Clemson has pickup days for the stuff that they spray and around the state all the time where the farmers can take those cans and get rid of them. But, we can take the empty cans if they've been washed out 2 or 3 times and we get something from what farmer it was that had it for the record. Most time they don't want to do that.
Yeah, I do think Clemson does pick up a lot of that because crop production, when you buy fertilizer and chemicals for them, they charge you a certain percentage, 2%, 3% for Clemson to recycle and pick up those materials.
Yeah.
Where I see from the agricultural standpoint is mostly, like you say, the small plants like you see over at Lowe's and all of these places with the little black pots. One of the things that a lot of the companies are going to is the biodegradable.
Yeah, peat pot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if they went to that, then it'll grow just as well in that. In fact, it's easier for the farmer because you don't now have to take it out of this thing. You can
Just
just set the
plug
whole
that
thing
in.
in the ground and it'll biodegradable. But you see, you're right, they got those little old black pots. I got a ton of them over there to the house. So if you see them over there in the dumps, I didn't put them there. I won't be one of the ones down here arguing with the folk about throwing away that, but there's nothing you can do with it,
No.
unless you burn it, I don't know how much toxic chemicals I'll be putting in the air if I burn it, but you're right. But if they use those little biodegradable things, usually when I grow my own seeds, that's what I get, it's a little biodegradable, and so you can just set the whole thing right in the ground. But yeah, that's something I'll look at, I'll see what Clemson is, picking up.
And you
especially
think
for my
about all of
2%.
those things, because once we lose Charleston, we're gonna lose the efficiency,
Yeah, and that's, so.
and we
right,
need to replace that with something.
stuff. And
Yeah.
so that was one of the concepts of looking at what is around here that we could replace that with, that we could get and recycle. So that's all I have. Anybody got any more questions or anything?
Nope, I think that covered it. Thank you.
All right.
It'd be good to be the chief at Cherokee,
It
wouldn't it?
would be.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, I don't know. They may run him out on a rail. I don't know how long you can stay there. It ain't gonna be like a Geronimo or nothing like that.
No.
So they probably get rid of him if they don't like it, yeah. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. So the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Did you call, I know you sent an email around, but did you call Mr. Campbell or anyone else that doesn't ever look at their emails to tell them we were eating?